So this is Father Charles Sikorsky, president of Divine Mercy University, and I'm joined here today by Logan Amster. Logan is a student in our School of Counseling and Masters in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. And welcome, Logan. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So why don't you just give me a little bit about, tell us a little bit about your background and what got you interested in becoming a counselor?
Yeah, well, I sort of always had kind of a latent desire, I would say, for the last 7 or 8 years to pursue counseling. There were a lot of aspects of it that I was really drawn to, and sort of came to a head when I was discerning religious life, and I was thinking about, we were actually trying to start a men's religious community, and in that, I had a great experience where I got to spend a month with Dr. Bob Schutz doing a workshop for priests and seminarians on healing. And while I was there, I really became firm in my decision, not only that I'd be leading my community, that I wanted to become a mental health counselor. So that was where I just knew where I really wanted to jump off to. And that was the first time I heard about DMU. I just approached Dr. Schutz and some of the other counselors that he was bringing in to help with the month-long workshop. And everybody unanimously said, the only place you need to look at is DMU, because they do the best of weaving in Catholic anthropology to real scientific-based counseling practice.
Okay. So you were, how did you get interested in the new order? Like were you out of college at that time, or? I
was out of college, yeah. So I'm 33 now, and when I was about 28, I approached a friend and a mentor of mine and said, hey, I want to be a priest, but I don't know where to pursue that. Because most people, it seems, when they have an interest in religious orders, that's an encounter that came from their youth. They had a history, and I didn't have any of that because I converted to Catholicism when I was 23. So when I was 28 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a priest. I didn't know how to do it, and he said, actually, I just happened to be starting a men's religious community. And so I became their first seminarian. And he's a very close friend of mine and was a great mentor to me. He was my first spiritual director. He taught me about prayer. He taught me about Lectio Divina, the Examen. So he'd always been a part of my spiritual life, and it just seemed like a natural fit. And so it just sort of blossomed on its own.
And were you practicing any faith before, or did you?
No, I grew up in a secular household. My mom was really into transcendental meditation. She was raised Catholic, left the church for 40 years, and came back when I was about 17. But when I was 10, I learned sitting meditation or walking meditation. When I was 13, I learned sitting meditation, sort of what you think traditional with your legs crossed. And it was when I was about 17 years old, she came back to the church. And then my 2 older brothers, my senior year of college, went through RCIA. And I started to sort of pick their brain and ask them about their faith encounter. And it sort of led me to the threshold of the church. And then I had a lot of working out of things to do from there.
Well, it is so beautiful. God has a path for each one of us, a particular way of revealing himself and leading us along that journey. It's something else. It's interesting. So you thought about priesthood, and then during that process, you saw this need for mental health counseling and felt more called to that.
Indeed.
That's okay.
Indeed.
It's one of the things, some of our best students are former seminarians and religious sisters, and I think there's a connection. I think sometimes focused missionaries, when people really want to serve others in a deep way.
Yeah.
Obviously, one way to do that is as being a member of the clergy, a priest, or a religious sister. As focused missionaries, they starting to get a great taste of that 2 years out working on the college campuses. But I think it also, if that's not ultimately what God is calling you to do, counseling and psychology is such a great way, because people are going to open up to you with things they probably won't even tell priests sometimes, right? They want kind of a neutral, maybe they're afraid to tell a priest because they don't want to be judged or whatnot, or they think the priest is going to do that.
Yeah.
So, but really, you're serving people on such a deep level.
Right.
I think that's a big. We see this in many cases, and many times, those who have some experience or trying to figure out what God was calling them to do, end up doing very, very well in the field. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was actually a kind of a practical process of saying, okay, it's clear to me that God doesn't want me to be a priest. But let's look at some of the desires that I had towards priesthood. What was it that drew me to priesthood? And one of those things was definitely that pastoral relationship. And I didn't have to let that go. There's a lot of those things that God asked me to let go. That I didn't have to. And so I was happy to carry that into counseling practice.
St. John Paul II has a great quote, something along, he talks about how each human person is really a mystery.
Yeah.
And he talks about how work of mental health professionals connects you to the tangled web of the workings of the human heart, and how to help people make sense of their prior experiences, things they're going through, struggling with, and so forth. So you really need, in a way, the priestly heart of Jesus. And we're all part of our baptism is, right, we're all priest, king, and prophet.
Yeah.
So great to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you picked DMU because you heard from Dr. Schutz and the others who were working at that great ministry.
Yeah.
They were recommending it.
Yeah, that's definitely what piqued my interest. And I started looking at other institutions. And it seemed like most places really are offering what is essentially a secular counseling program. And this is the only place that I found that, in our, we call them PhD, it's philosophy, in our PhD courses, you are really getting thorough, firmly rooted, magisterially faithful philosophy, Catholic anthropology. And to me, particularly as I get further in the program, it's just so striking how our vision of what human flourishing looks like is essential to the practice of counseling. If we can't agree on where we're going, and if there's not some consensus, then the practice is sort of aimless. And so to me, the idea of flourishing that's proposed both by DMU, but ultimately by the church, is the one that I want to try to fulfill.
Yeah, that's a great point. What is truly for the good of the person, and what's our goal in therapy?
Right.
Make someone does it feel better for the short term, or are we trying to lead them a life that's going to be fulfilling, a life that has an eternal destiny, a life that we're fulfilled in virtue and things like that.
Yeah.
So how long are you now in the counseling program?
I'm about halfway through the academic program.
About halfway. Okay.
Yeah.
And how the next you mentioned a little bit that you're learning more about the human person.
Yeah.
What a human person is and what makes a person even happy.
Right.
How are the teachers? How's everything been?
It's been fantastic. I have thoroughly enjoyed the program. For me, it's different because I do it part-time. So I'm only taking one class at a time, and that's the pace I have to go at because I work full-time. But it's a nice spread where we'll take a couple more counseling skills, counseling theory, emphasis classes, and then we'll get a philosophy course. And so it's sort of like 2 or 3 counseling courses, then a philosophy course. And I like that pacing where we sprinkle in the anthropology as we go and sort of continue to lay the foundation.
Yeah, so that's there's the part-time ops, right? So if you're working full-time, it still is possible, and you're able to make that work with you.
It does work. It does work. It's sort of one of those things where if you commit to do a few hours a day in your evenings, absolutely possible.
And so what are your plans when you get your degree? Do you have an idea what you want to do with this degree?
Well, I'm trying to be realistic about that, but I've sort of always just wanted to have private practice.
Right.
I was in the working world before I ever pursued priesthood. And so I think I acquired just enough of those business skills to be able to run my own shop. And that's really what I'd like to do. And I really liked being able to just sort of control my own destiny, not be subject to other influences, and really just have more pure relationships with my clients and just be able to serve them without any sort of answering to anyone else other than to them and God.
Right,
Yeah.
so running your own shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're up in the New York, New Jersey area.
Yep.
And I'd imagine there's plenty of people up there who are going to need your help.
Indeed. Yeah, we have an interesting blend too, because in my community there's heavy Hispanic population, so it's a good thing I speak Spanish. And I think that's a community that presents a growing need in our country as we see that population continue to grow so rapidly. So that might be a part of my future as well.
Any words for someone who might be considering this career and maybe they're on the fence and they're not quite sure?
Yeah.
Any advice you might give?
Yeah, for me, a big part of it was paying attention to what people were saying around me. Not so, just as far as taking their feedback. I had a number of people say, wow, have you considered something in counseling or something like that? And I think that shouldn't be ignored. So that was kind of helpful to kind of get the ball rolling. And then start to look at the program and start to look at programs, look at their curriculum, see if those, even just the names of the courses are interesting. You know, does it appeal to you? And then I also bought the CCMMP before I was a student, and just sort of, I mean, it's an intimidating read, I think, for most people. But once I really started to get through it, and I sort of started to form a little bit of what I thought their picture of the human person looked like, it made me very excited to be a part of that. Yeah. So I think that those, for me, particularly as far as landing at DMU, were sort of three essential pieces.
Yeah, well, with the CCMMP, of course, is our textbook. Yeah, we have a new nickname for it, the model for human flourishing. But what makes a human person?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that. That's a great point. Actually, would help me in my own discernment of the priesthood. You know, are you the kind of person sometimes people come and ask you questions or unload or tell you what's really going on deep in their heart? And for some reason, I had a few people doing that to me. You know, maybe that's a sign, you know, that God wants me to be able to serve people on a different level. And I think it could be also a sign for those who are considering. Your friends confide things to you, or your family members. You know, that could be a real sign that you have a gift for this field.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that too. Because, like I said, that's an essential part of paying attention to the people around you. And you know, you make a great point. And by the grace of God, I've come to a program that also emphasizes learning how to listen a little better.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty helpful.
That's what we all need to learn.
But I did find that, yeah.
But if you work at it, it's not that hard.
No, it's not. You know, you just have to learn to
people
slow
know
down.
and say, what are you talking about? You don't do it. But, yeah.
Right.
Well, Logan, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great talking to you, and God bless you in your work, and we'll be praying for your success in the program, and also with the big ideas you have for the future.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Take care. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye.